Today, my guest is Brandon Zellers from the Spears Group with Compass in Destin, Florida, also the 30A corridor. Let me tell you a little bit more about Brandon. Now, this is incredible. And a lot of times when we have guests on, people our audience tells me they sort of tune out during someone's bio, but I really want you to tune in for this because so much of what we're going to be discussing today is really woven into this particular bio. So Brandon is 29 years old, and he has been long interested in every facet of real estate, from interior to architecture, but initially chose a different career path, like so many of our listeners. Brandon had worked in sales roles over the years, including locally and in his hometown of Kansas City, Missouri. He made the move to medical sales and began investing in real estate properties. Brandon's entrepreneurial spirit eventually compelled him to strike out on his own, earning his real estate license and turning his investments into a full-fledged career. Now, he joined the Spears Group as a sales associate in 2020, right in a very difficult time, I think, to become a realtor. And he closed over 33 million in his first year as an agent. I don't know anybody personally that has done that. So he closed 33 million in his first year, and he is 29 years old today. So that means he was 27 or 28 when that happened. But that's not all he does, which is even more impressive. In his free time, he operates Drive Destin, which is an executive luxury car rental business, and has his own streetwear clothing line called Sky, SYKE. The brand partners with organizations committing to abolishing slavery and trafficking around the globe. For more information about Brandon, you can always find him at the Spears Group website, which is thespearsgroup.com. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that intro.
I love reading people's bios, and I love putting them together, and yours really stands out among the 400 plus episodes we've done. I am really in awe of what you've accomplished, and I've had Jonathan Spears, who runs the Spears Group, on our show before. I think I've actually had him on twice, and he's just been a wonderful guest, and I'm so glad that we're having you on. What I always like to do is to really start at the beginning, because you've done a lot of different things in a short amount of time that you've been working as an adult. And I'm really interested to hear about your path into real estate. And I know you started out as an investor, but tell us about that. Like, how did you even get started as an investor?
So I'll take you back to 2019. I was in Kansas City and I really just was struggling overall with, I had some alcohol abuse and was at an extremely low point in my life. And I decided to just kind of make the jump. I bought a one-way ticket, came to Florida, and I was like, I'm going to figure it out. But I needed to get my mental health back on track.
Sure.
So I came out here. I knew growing up, I was going to be in sales one way or the other. I thought medical sales would be incredible. So when I slowly, got to recovery, got my mind right, I started attacking some of these medical sales companies and, putting my name in front of them. I eventually landed one. I was there. It was an incredible opportunity. I was able to, get a couple investment properties. This was right whenever COVID was happening. And so I got a couple investment properties and realized, my true passion is real estate. I loved it. I loved every piece of it. Really into fashion. So the interior design, it goes hand in hand as well. So from there, I was like, okay, I need to just bet on myself here. So that's whenever I went and got my real estate license. And I think it was day 3 of real estate school. I picked up the phone and I called the broker, or I called Spears Group, and just was like, hey, I'm getting my license. I really want to be in real estate. I saw you guys sell the most expensive properties. I'm really interested. And mind you, I've never sold a piece of real estate in my life, but I was determined I tell people like I was at such a low point in my life that I was willing to take risks, you know?
Sure.
And so whenever I got on the phone with them that third day, they were like, we don't hire new agents, and kind of went on that. That's how the phone call started. They left like 10 to 15 seconds, and I pitched myself as much as I could to the point they were like, okay, let's sit down next Monday. Um, so went up and sat with them, had lunch, and one thing led to another, and I got on with the Spears Group, which was, one of the biggest opportunities in my life. But that's how I got into the real estate space.
It's an amazing story because so many brokerages, our own included, here in Chicago that I work at, we're always looking to hire agents, whether they're newly licensed or experienced, but not every firm is like that. And the Spears Group, for those of you that aren't familiar, are one of the top producing real estate teams in the country, actually, and certainly within Compass, which is the brokerage that they work with. And Jonathan Spears, who runs that team, he's 31 years old. So the fact that he's even accomplished all that at such a young age is beyond remarkable. But also that, yeah, they're getting calls, I would assume, every day from other realtors going, can I join your team? You guys are crushing it. I want a piece of that pie. And I have to imagine they have to play defense. I imagine they play defense a lot, going, well, we don't, yeah, you're new, and we don't have time. We're too busy. And they made time for you, and they saw something in you that maybe they saw in themselves as well. And the fact that you were able to pitch yourself in 10 to 15 seconds, I think that's really important. And I almost want to spend just a moment on that. That's really what we call an elevator pitch, right? This idea of, do you have a way to present what, to somebody, in an elevator setting where you only have 10 to 15 seconds before, the meeting ends? What did you, if you don't mind me asking, what did you say? Do you remember what you said in that time?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really talked about, so we live now Destin is a beach town. So you can only imagine, a lot of people here, they work, but they also spend a lot of time at the beach. But I'm coming from Kansas City. It's a lot more fast paced. It's a lot more hustle, day to day grind. So I just really, talked about my mentality, bringing that city life mentality to the beach is really advantageous. That, and I'm a blank canvas to them. I don't have any bad habits when it comes to real estate, when it comes to sales in this space, and they can almost create, the agent that they want me to be by handing me the tools.
Yeah, that's true. However, it is a ton of work, right? They have to put in a
Absolutely.
ton
Yeah.
of work. And obviously that investment paid off because, you did 33 million in your first year, which I don't want everyone to assume that, oh, well, he was just handed, the 33 million in leads, which, I don't suspect is the case. And I know Jonathan pretty well. And I don't suspect he as nice a guy as he is. I suspect he's not just handing you the deals. But the fact that you did get to learn from somebody who's had so much success, and it was literally a phone call that you made one phone call, and I'm sure you maybe called other places too, but just this idea of, hey, I want to work with you guys. You're the best. That is a really, really impressive thing. So what was it like in your first year? Because you were, I guess, surrendering to their process, learning their process, sort of going, hey, I don't have any bad habits. What was it like did you find that you didn't also have some of maybe the limitations that you might have thought in your mind of what was possible in your first year? Like, I suspect most people don't even assume that that's even possible to do that kind of production in year one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to, about the lead generation and everything. So out of that 33 million, 28 million was off of cold calls alone. That was strictly cold calling. I mean, I really, I really focus on my processes, my systems. Every day I go to the exact same spot at the beach. I sit in a parking lot for 4.5 hours every single day. I make X amount of calls. And I mean, it's really just staying consistent with the basics. That's really all it is.
Wait, you sit. This is shocking to me. I need to unpack this. you drive to the beach, which is beautiful and gorgeous, and why not? You live there, right? You might as
Yeah.
well. And I had a beach day on Friday here in Chicago, and I thought it was going to be, just as a quick aside, I thought it would be really busy because it was in the 80s, and I was like, "Oh, last good day for beach." So we went out, and we were literally a block away from the downtown, but nobody was out there because it was a work day. It was a Friday. And it felt like, oh, why don't I do this more often? Right. And so
Yeah.
anyway, you drive to the beach, but you're there to work. So you literally just sit in your car and pound the phone.
In my car. Yes. It's
Incredible.
it's weird. I think it's weird to hear it, but I mean, it works. Like all the beach ambassadors that walk back and forth, like the ladies are all like my best friends now. We talk every day. Like it's just
you're a
me.
regular.
Yeah, I get there at like 6, 7 a.m. I just like to start my day there. It's very therapeutic just looking at the water, and
For
just
sure.
getting in that zone.
I mean, that's your office. That's your own personal
Yeah.
space. And it's actually kind of brilliant in a way, because not only is it relaxing and enjoyable when you're about to do some really difficult stuff, making 4 hours of calls every day is not easy for anybody to do, right? That's hard. That's hard. And so you might as well put yourself in a situation where it's at least a little bit enjoyable. Also, it eliminates distraction, right? Like nobody, I mean, right. I guess you could, take breaks when you want to and go talk to people, but like no one's knocking on the door going, "Hey, what are you doing in there?"
Yeah.
And so is that one of the reasons too? Is it just gives you that private time to just get your work done?
Yeah. The isolation. I'm really not an office person by any means. I like to, I don't want to say like have control of my space, but have control of my space. I like to just get in my car, go get my coffee, go get my breakfast. I'm very routine based. That's how I operate. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So after it started working. Like, why would I stop now? So I still do that to this day.
I I am in awe of that. That is remarkable and smart, and really something that anybody could do who owns a vehicle, right? Like
Yeah.
anybody could go do that, and it's a great way if you find yourself being constantly interrupted by people in the office or at home. It's like, hey, I'm going to work, I'm going to a park, I'm going to the beach, I'm going, and I'm just gonna yeah, that's, oh man, I've never heard anybody say that. I absolutely just love that. And then let's talk about those cold calls, because I know everyone listening is going like, what kind of cold calls is he making? So who are you reaching out to? I'm just curious.
I'm reaching out to, I work primarily with a lot of investors. So we're in the second home market here, very vacation rental base. Um, we have one of the best returns in the whole country when it comes to an annual, return 10 to 12%. You can't on a $4 million house, like you're not finding that anywhere else except for Destin, Florida. So it's pretty incredible, which makes there's a lot of buyers always coming in. There's a lot of sellers. So I'm usually just trying to play matchmaker with that. I'll either have a buyer that is looking for a great return property, or I have a seller, or I'm calling on sellers to see if, because I know, all right, this house is 4,000 square feet, 8 bedrooms, X proximity to the beach, it should do blank. I'm looking for those properties if they were purchased 2019, 2020, and I'm calling them. I'm cold calling them, and I'm asking, what's your price? And
So,
just getting
so
the
this is
conversation started.
this is really interesting. So you see yourself maybe as much of a like a matchmaker as a like you're looking for opportunities, and then you're looking for people to put those opportunities who would be interested in those opportunities. So when you say cold calling, you're probably calling, are you calling other realtors as well to say, hey, I know you work with these kind of clients. Are you calling just big investors from all over the country? Like you mentioned, I'm just curious, like what type of people are you reaching out to?
Yeah. So occasionally it'll be agents, especially if I have, a hot property and I'm looking to flip it quick. I'm calling all the agents who, are in the same space as me when it comes to the investors, and seeing who they have for the property. Because
Got it.
a lot of our, buyers aren't just buying one and then they're done. They're buying one, two, three, four. If there's a good deal, they're buying it, which
Right.
is awesome. But I try to add value on both sides. That's
Sure.
kind of how I look at my day to day. Where can I
And
add
and you're also
value?
You're also doing something really, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're
No,
doing
you're
something
good.
really, really smart that I think anybody could do who had people purchasing properties, 2+ years ago, where, maybe the value, depending on the market, of course, not every market is up anymore. But some markets are, and some properties are. And you're basically calling people who bought and saying, hey, your place is worth more now. And I'm curious if, do you find that the agent that helped them buy the property at first have you found that those, a lot of times those agents aren't staying on top of their clients and aren't going, hey, by the way, you're up like 20%, from 2 years ago. You may want to sell this thing. Like, are you running into people going, I already have an agent, or are you running into a lot of people going, yeah, I haven't heard from my agent in a long time?
That is what I had to figure out with my approach. If I approach it with, we just sold the house next door, would you be interested in an offer? That kind of just perks their interest. And then
Sure.
can just get the conversation started. Usually I do have somebody, but there's often times where they are interested, but their price is literally 30% higher than I anticipated it was going to be. So then I have to play a game like, okay, is this even worth exploring, or do we just do we move on? Um,
Wow.
but occasionally, obviously, we do have the sellers who are dedicated to their previous agent, which is fine. Um, but we just got to make the call. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I guess it is because, a lot of these people who have, second, third, fourth homes that they use themselves, or if they're investors who are looking, for opportunities, they probably oftentimes don't care who makes the call. They just want the deal, right? So it's probably like whoever gets to them with the deal is likely to maybe, has a good shot of closing it, despite whatever their previous relationships might be.
Yeah, 100%. And it's weird because, as you know, in real estate, it's the only industry where you're collabing and competing with the same
Yeah.
people. Like it makes it an interesting dynamic, but the collaborative part is very important. So there are there are times you don't want to, rub anybody wrong or step on anybody's toes either. So you're always just treading lightly and
But I love
checking
that
the team.
idea of, I have a friend who did a very similar thing to what you were talking about, and she just sold a 6 point something million dollar property here in Chicago because she literally, the buy, so she had a listing that was 6 million and the seller pulled out at the last moment. The seller was like a little wacky, and anyway pulled out after a contract was already signed and had gone through attorney review, and the seller just is like, we're canceling the deal. Well, she was on the listing side and she was like mortified because this was her biggest transaction ever. She's professional, she's very well respected, and the seller pulled out. So what she did is she knew that the buyer was still wanting to buy something, and she literally walked next door to the property that was also worth $6 million and said, hey, I was representing next door, it didn't happen. If you're looking to sell, I have a buyer for you. And it wasn't even her client, right? It was just, whoever the buyer was, who was going to buy the original property. And she said, I don't know who who you normally work with, but I think I can get X for your property. If I can get that for you, would you sell? And they were like, yeah, totally. And so she ended
Yep.
up salvaging that. And it's the same thing you were talking about. I mean, it's really the same sort of opportunity. And nobody had gone to that person and said, if you sell right now, you could probably get 6 million or whatever it was. And so my friend did it and got the deal. And I go, do you know who the realtor was that originally was on the buy side of that original transaction? And she's like, oh, I totally know who it is, but they just dropped the ball and didn't stay in touch.
Yeah. It happens to all of us. We all have
Totally.
those. So it's what it comes around, it goes around. But what we call that is, prospecting with purpose. That's what we like to, where we already have the one side, we know exactly what they want. We go after that directly. Um, and then because when you're making those calls, it's not as cold. It's still cold, but it's not as cold because
Yeah.
you do have, it's not, hey, would you be interested in selling? We can list it for you. It's, hey, we just sold this house. We have X amount of buyers who are also interested in the same type of property. You have it. How do we make this work? How do we get this deal done? What's your price?
Uh, that is a brilliant strategy. It's very simple too, but it's this idea of having a reason to call, and not, it's not like, hey, I want to build rapport with you and I want to, over time win you over it. And of course, if you want to do that as well, but this idea of leading with, it's kind of like, every year when I get to tax time, my accountant says, hey, I need all your taxes. And I love my accountant. I'm in no way, this is going to sound like I'm like being disparaging towards her. She's wonderful. But you know what I would love is if she called me and said, hey, here's like this new tax thing just changed. And what I really want you to do is think about this for next year so that you can, again, bringing an opportunity to me. Right. And look, I'm not saying she's not supposed to, she doesn't have to do that, but boy, I'd love it if she did, because every year I Google, I go, were there any tax law changes I should take advantage of?
Yeah.
But if somebody were to bring that to me, I would be indebted to them. So I love that, prospecting with purpose. Have a reason to call somebody, not just a, hey, what's going on? Are you thinking about buying or selling? That's really, really smart. Now, you do more than just real estate. So you didn't just, and by the way, 33 million in 1 year, even if you did that on one transaction, which I know it was many, many transactions, that would still be a full-time thing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you operate Drive Destin, which is luxury car rental. How'd you get into luxury car rental?
On accident, honestly. It's kind of a funny story. I when I was in the medical sales space, um, I'm obviously moved down to Florida. There's a lot of people with Jeeps. I thought I needed a Jeep too, a Jeep Wrangler. I had a Mercedes-Benz CLA 250. That's the car I brought from Kansas City here. And I had someone who was actually going to purchase the Mercedes, so I went ahead and bought the Jeep. She backed out of buying the car, so I was sitting right with two cars, and I was like, awesome. I put it on. I put it on. There's an app called Turo. It's like,
Sure.
it's essentially Airbnb for vehicles, for
Yeah.
renting your vehicles. I put it on there. It does 3,000 first month on a car. I was like,
Wow.
hang on. It's like, hang on, because
That's all my payments for a year or more. Yeah.
I was like, and at that time I was only one of 6 vehicles on the whole app, like in this area. It was relatively new here. And so I was like, this is interesting. Kind of, that was the end of 2020. Or yeah, the end of 2020. And then during 2021 is when I really, kicked it up. And I just copied, paste, copied, paste, copy, paste. It just kept adding, adding, adding. I hired a director of operations from Kansas City. He moved down here because now we're up to 20 vehicles and
Wow.
it's just full play. Yeah. I mean, it started with that Mercedes, but we have, BMW i8 with the doors that, come up like that. Really
Yeah.
cool. Some BMW M6, a lot of Escalades, because there's a bunch of families that travel and like in packs. And so the
Sure.
Escalades are amazing. And there was a rental car shortage at our
Yes.
airports. So
Yeah.
people were like, oh, we'll just Uber. But there's also a shortage of that here because everybody wants to go to the beach. So they're calling us like after one day, like, yeah, this Uber thing isn't gonna work. Do you guys have any cars? And so it's kind of cool how it's worked out. I'm looking forward to, continuing to grow that, just to see what happens. It's a fun business. It allows me to, drive multiple cars. I love cars. So it just allows me to have multiple cars that are kind of paying for themselves, and I can switch in and out of them. It's cool. It's cool. I love it.
Oh, I had a Jeep Wrangler many, many, many years ago, and here in the city of Chicago, which people oftentimes are like, oh, and it was manual. It was a stick shift, and I remember people thinking like, oh, that just sounds terrible, and I'm like, well, it's not great in the winter, but because we like maybe I'd get the hard top on in time for the first freeze or something, but if I didn't, then it was a lot of fun. But I go, man, Wranglers are super fun vehicles too, and certainly in a beach town, they're just everywhere.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I love that you have this luxury fleet and you like building that business. You saw an opportunity. I also want to talk about your streetwear line, Psych, because there's a, you talked about prospecting with a purpose. There's a real purpose and mission behind what you're doing with clothing, your clothing line, about dealing with sex trafficking, slavery, things of that nature. How did you get involved in that?
So that actually goes back all the way to 2017. Um, my uncle and I actually were just sitting in his basement, and like I said, I've always been into fashion. He's always been like my business mentor growing up. I just watch him, big entrepreneur, and so here I am, like young kid, like, hey, let's start a clothing brand, not realizing it's like literally one of the hardest industries to get
Yeah,
into.
you're
Like,
competing with ridiculous
yeah,
big boys who get all the shelf space. They get all the, I mean, if you're talking about retail, it's like the hardest thing to ever break into.
yeah, like and so it's kind of it's become like more of a lifelong mission. Like, we're just never going to give it up. We slowly grow it, every year, inch by inch. Um, but I once held at Kansas City Fashion Week. I did a runway show for the brand, and it was really cool because it goes back to abolishing the sex trafficking and all of that. We had like the models with their hands tied up, like very
You're making a statement.
yeah. It was a very statement, which it did exactly what it needed to do. It was an incredible experience, and that kind of put our brand up there a little bit in our city, which was really cool. And we've kind of just been keep going with that. We were very involved with A21, which is a
Yeah.
huge, you know,
Mhm.
campaign for all that. And yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's something we'll just do forever. Um, I don't think it's ever going to be our priority business. I wish one day it would be. That'd be awesome if we had a massive brand that was just helping global issues. Like, that's incredible. But on top of that, we also have a wholesale side of it as well.
Sure.
So we do merch and fulfill orders for a bunch of companies. So
I love it.
it's kind of just a
And
well-oiled machine now. So
yeah, I also wonder too, and I don't know if you talk about that with your clients, that, oh, by the way, I have this other thing. I'm not sure the pros and cons of talking about other businesses when you're, working with somebody on a
yeah,
real estate transaction, but I suspect if they were to hear the mission, and, oh, by the way, I have this other thing, and here's what we're trying to do with it. I mean, whose heart wouldn't melt a little bit, and sort of feel both sad and also grateful that you're out there trying to make some of those changes. So
yeah.
I'm curious, does that ever come up when you're working with clients, or do you more keep that more low key?
Um, I usually wait till there's a good segue organically
Sure.
in client to client, depending on, because a lot of my clients are, friends now. So some of them I definitely do bring it up, but it's just it it
Yeah.
it differs on who it is, I guess.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I just applaud you for trying to make a difference and giving back. And I wonder how much of this idea you talked about at the beginning, like going through this surrender process of, dealing with your own issues and challenges, and sort of surrendering and saying, hey, I'm going to make this better. I'm going to get the help, that is needed. And then going to the Spears group saying, hey, I'm new, I need help. I want you guys to mentor me, and here you are. But a question more about prioritization, because I think a lot of us have struggled with that. So, not many of our listeners probably have a rental car business as well as a fashion line, but they have other things. They have families they're taking care of, children, they've got other jobs. How do you prioritize your day? I know you talked about, hey, you're spending at least half a day or so, at your real estate job, probably more than that is my guess. But how do you figure out where to spend your time?
At the beginning, I'll be honest, I didn't. I would just try to do everything. And that's why I mentioned how I had to hire someone to move down here and help out with the business, because I had to give some of it away in order to grow. And so that's kind of been a huge value add in terms of my business and prioritization, because now I'm able to focus on, the bigger projects that'll, in the end help everything else that I'm working on. So that's kind of really, it's for me, real estate. I'll check in on drive and stuff, but we have that system is beautiful right now. It's going great. We're still growing it. And then psych, like I said, that's with a couple partners. So that's like a weekend thing. We get together once or twice a month and chat about that. But I just like to keep my mind. I like to keep going. I like to keep my mind busy. I like to see what all I can explore. I'm hoping to, start on a couple new adventures as well. So this upcoming year.
Amazing. Do you, well, you know what, we'll leave that for, we won't, we'll leave that for a future episode, because I'm curious. I don't want to spoil whatever secretive, cool stuff you're working on. I'm just excited to watch it come to be. But I do have a question about, this idea of competition, because again, for anyone listening, they just thinks, wow, they live in this vacation area, lots of wealthy people come and go. It's just, handing out money and opportunities, which we, I'm sure is not the case. But there's also fierce competition, because it's not like you guys are the only brokers in town, right? Or the only
Right.
realtors in town. There's probably thousands. So you're competing against people who have been doing this 30, 40 years, who have really established impressive histories, right? These are not bozo, who just got their license and 55 years old person. This is somebody these are people that have been working in this area for a very long time, doing very well. And you guys come along and you are grabbing up market share. Why do you think you're able to do that at such a young age? Is it strictly because, as you said, you prospect with purpose, you have a reason to pick up the phone and call someone, or is it more than that?
That's definitely a piece of it. Another piece is, Jonathan has really pioneered a big part of this market. Him coming in at such a young age and accomplishing everything he's accomplished, over $1 billion, that he hit that 3 years ago, in his career. It's incredible. So he's really set the stage, and we're just blessed to, work alongside him and leverage his success to help us and help our brand. That's a
Yeah.
huge part of it.
Yeah, I guess it's funny. He's only 31, but he's sort of like he's been the big deal in that area for
Yeah.
many years now. So I guess he's not the new kid on the block, but at some point he was. And this idea of being able to, out compete, because again, when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar properties, I'm guessing that a lot of times the buyers and sellers, they don't interview just one agent, they probably interview
Yeah.
many agents. So how do you how do you feel like you compete when you're up against other agents for one transaction? Like, what is it that you think you do that's maybe a bit different?
So we focus on being proactive opposed to reactive, and building the relationships over just having a transaction. Those two things alone will set you apart from 99% of your competitors.
Yeah.
Truly getting in, having great conversations with the seller or the buyer, whoever you're being interviewed with, and adding value will win every single time. And just we're authentic. We know the space. We're very knowledgeable on the area, on the properties, on the pricings. And it's something that we've found success in, just following those simple steps. So
Yeah, it is funny. It's like when I first started working at the company here, I did not have a real estate background. And my boss said, I said, what do you think? Because he was like the rookie of the year, his first year, and he was in his, he might've been 30 years old, maybe. No, late 20s. And he was rookie of the year in Chicago, which is kind of a big deal. And it was a really big deal. And I said, why do you think it was? And Nick, our owner, is like the nicest guy ever. He's not particularly salesy, and he's just a good guy. And I said, what do you think it is? Why do you think you had so much success in your first year? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I only had one rule, which was I never wanted a client to have to call me first. right? I wanted my clients to be like, oh, I don't have to ever call. Like they're calling me,
Yeah.
he's calling them going, hey, here's what's going on. And he was my realtor. And I thought back because he was my realtor years before. And I thought back to my experience with him and I'd never had another experience. So I didn't know it was anything special, but I went, you're right. I never had to call you when I was worried about a particular thing in my transaction. You always called me first. And it is funny. You're right. It probably that in and of itself being proactive versus reactive probably does separate you from close to 99, even if it's just 90% of the competition. That is 9 out of 10 people who are, I'll finish with this, but I interviewed one of the top, I've interviewed actually a bunch of the top realtors here in Chicago. And one of them said the exact same thing. She goes, I call every one of my clients every week. And I was like, and she goes, no, that's about it. It's like, is that it? She goes, well, there's more to it, but that's the thing I do that like no one else does. And
Yeah,
I was like,
you gotta touch them. Yeah, I mean, you have to. You got to be top of
and
mind.
curious about social media because you're a young guy. You certainly are no stranger to social media. How much has social media played a role in the success of your business, or has it not? I don't know if you're the investors and buyers and sellers are checking you out on social, or I'm just curious what if you're utilizing that.
It's funny because I thought that none of them were checking me out on social because they don't follow until
Yeah.
a couple of them over the past month, have mentioned that, oh yeah, I saw you on Instagram, Facebook. And I was like, okay, they are watching. And I don't know if I assume that it's helping, because I like to, my clients say that I'm annoyingly persistent in the best way possible. And I think that's one of my biggest strengths because I've heard that multiple times. Um, because I just, persist without exception, regardless. Like you have to just push through. You can hear no a million times and you have to follow up. I think a big piece of this is you have to follow up. Um, but I mean, I link all of my socials in my virtual business cards and everything. So they always have access directly to it. It's hard to say if I would like to say that it helps. I know there's a lot of agents right now who think they can post on TikTok one video and they're going to be selling 100 million when it's really still not that simple, especially with the market shifting. um you have to maintain the fundamentals and the basics, which means you're going to have to pick up the phone one way or the other. You can post the videos, I post the videos, but you have to stay true to the basics.
Yeah. I almost forgot to ask this question because we ask all of our guests ahead of time a few questions to kind of give me some things to talk about. And I almost never get to this question. And the reason I'm going to get to it isn't so much that it's as funny as it is one of the smartest things I've ever heard. So for real estate. So I really want everybody to pay attention. Honestly, I truly believe this. So one of the questions we ask is, what's your funniest real estate experience? And so I'll just tell the quick story, but I want to talk about how you solve the problem versus the actual story about the problem, because the problem was you were brand new in one of your first showings and you were on your way to the showing and you blanked, or maybe you were at the showing, but you blanked on all the information, right? You didn't have it memorized, which, I mean, who does, right? Very few people do. So tell me about how you solved that problem. Because, well, actually, I'm sorry, tell us the story about how you blanked on the information, because I actually do want
So
to hear it.
this was at the very beginning. I had already, I mean, it's nerve wracking. We're in multi-million dollar properties. I just started, like I don't know really what I'm doing, but I'm here. Like I don't know how, but here we are. And so I'm like, trying to fake it till I make it until that gets real with at a showing. And I'm sitting
Sure.
there, like, oh, how tall are these ceilings? What kind of lights? What kind of floors? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like just unprepared. I thought I was prepared. I was unprepared. Like I wasn't ready at all. And it was the most embarrassing thing by far in my real estate career. And from that moment, like I would just either walk through the house and talk in my phone. So I had all the information, or I'd go on the MLS, type out a bunch of notes. And then what I would do is I put like a text to speech. And so basically you just copy everything you wrote, and then you can have like a Siri voice basically play it back. So then like for if I knew I had a big showing coming up, I would just, and I'm representing the buyer, I would just, drive, put it over my radio and just let it repeat, just so that I
Wow.
knew, yeah, like just
That,
system overload. But then when someone asks a question, you'll subconsciously like know the answer because you heard it 4,500 times on the way.
I mean, it's sometimes they always, sometimes what's Occam's razor, the most direct solution or the simplest solution is oftentimes the most effective, and or something to that nature. I probably did not sort of quote that correctly, but we understand the idea, and that is a brilliant and simple idea, right? It's like, yeah, how cool is it to be able to walk through a property when a client asks a question, and you don't have to go to your phone, and you don't have to, and I suppose you could if you really needed to, but you're like, I already know that because I've heard it replay over and over again on the car on the way down. I've never heard of another agent doing that. So that is, I'm so glad that you shared that with me.
Absolutely. I have some weird things. Driving to the beach and then driving and listening to to MLS bios.
Though, but that's really, it's smart. It shows preparedness. It shows this idea that I take this very seriously, and I'm going to go to the beach because I like the beach, but I'm going to work, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to sit in my car and make dials. And I don't know how many people make 4 hours of dials a day. I suspect it's less than 1/10 of 1% of realtors. It's probably essentially nobody. And you're doing it, and you close 33 million, and you're a nice guy. You don't seem to be a pushy, salesy kind of guy. That's not your personality, and it's not the Spears Group's personality either. I know some of those guys, and they're just nice, easygoing people, but they work hard and they're smart, and that's a really smart thing to do. And it's hard work too. It's not easy to sit in a car and pound the phone all day long trying to put deals together. So, how much of your success is just the discipline of it?
uh I would say, a large majority definitely is, sticking to the processes. Jonathan said at the beginning when I started that that was the most important thing. You have to get a system in place, you have to get a process, and then you have to stick to it. There'll be days that are worse than others, days that are better than others, hear a lot of no's, and you have to learn from your failures. Like I'm not afraid to fail because I felt like I failed in the past and I've, overcome that
Yeah,
tenfold. So, back to like the drinking and then overcoming. I'm
sure.
3 years sober now as of 2 weeks ago. So it's
Congratulations.
little things like that, just one day at a time. Um, and then taking risks. I mean, you have to take risks.
I think a lot of realtors could probably benefit from some of the lessons in the 12-step programs. In particular, for those of you that aren't familiar with 12-step programs, one of the sort of biggest things in them is this idea of structure, and having, like, if you're a meeting person, there's meetings and you go to them as regularly as possible. And that in and of itself, just people going to these meeting rooms and saying, hey, I'm struggling, or I'm here to be of service, oftentimes helps keep them on track. Just going somewhere and doing it. And you're sort of saying the same thing. I go to the beach, I pick up the phone and I start dialing. And some days it's easier than others. And some days I strike gold, and other days I do not. But I'm just going to keep doing it because ultimately, there's a track record of it working for other people. And so I think there is something to this idea of structure, routine. Obviously, discipline is, like, anybody would disagree with how important discipline is, but it is remarkable that you were able to sort of rebuild at a time when, alcohol in particular can really take somebody down for the count. You probably are aware of that. And most people who have that illness do not recover. And so this idea that not only did you recover, but you're thriving, is truly impressive. And I wonder, if you hadn't have gone through that experience, I'm curious, would you be as successful as you were today? Like, if you were still able to do it all and, continue, with some of the behavior that maybe wasn't so healthy, do you think you'd be able to keep it all together?
Uh, I have to say no, not,
Yeah.
and definitely not. My growth wouldn't have been as quick as
Yeah.
it has been in the last 2 years. I mean, I just thank God every day because it's I look back and I'm like, that is crazy. I see old pictures of me. I was 70 pounds heavier
Wow.
whenever, yeah. So, and I remember at my old sales jobs in Kansas City, like I would always still be like a top producer. but I there was so much more I could have gave. And like this is, the fruit of that. Like I'm seeing that I was right because I always be like, you gotta calm down, you gotta chill, you gotta relax, you gotta get better. And like because when I was sober, like I had laser focus. I thought I could conquer the world. And so that's how I feel today. And so
Yeah.
it's literally I wouldn't go back for anything.
Well, I
And we're
think that's a
still, I mean,
great
the marathon continues, like we're still we're still pushing one day at a time.
one of my favorite quotes is it's an old Zen. I think they're called koans. Anyway, a Zen saying. I don't. Maybe it's not Zen, but somewhere I stole it from somewhere. But it's. I thought it was a Zen thing, but it's a great one. And it's before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So this idea that the works goes on, right? But
Uh-huh.
at least your mind is clearer. You're able to give more of yourself to the things that that you're involved in and want to do versus the things that you find yourself doing to cope with other things. So I think that is just remarkable and a great place to wrap up. So I want to give a shout out to not only Drive Destin, but also Psych. If somebody's interested in renting a luxury car in Destin, we do have listeners who of course vacation there. So what's the best way they can learn about your car rental?
Yeah, so they can go to at Drive Destin, just like it sounds, drivedestin.com, or honestly, you can type in rental cars Destin and we're right there. So
Yeah.
there's multiple, or they can come and DM me at Bzellas, Bzellas, and I'll hook them up for sure.
Awesome. And then if anyone wants to help support the Psych brand and mission, what's the best way they can do that?
So on Instagram, it's SYKE, just 4 letters. And then the website is psychbrand.com.
Awesome. Well, we will post links to both of those side
Awesome.
businesses because we want to support that, and we honor your time today. And Jonathan, I believe if I might have this wrong because my memory is garbage, but I think he had reached out to us and says, "You got to talk to this guy. He just joined my team." I'm pretty sure he did, and we are so honored because again, not a lot of people have had that level of success that quickly, and not that you haven't been successful in other things, but just that in and of itself, 33 million in year one is absolutely remarkable, and I honor you for that. I'm excited to see your new ventures, excited to see how your real estate career continues to evolve, and we're big fans of the Spears Group and what you're doing as well. So thank you, Brandon. On behalf of all of our listeners, we want to thank you for your time. I know how busy you are. This is not an easy time to find an hour to speak to us, so I appreciate you doing that. And also on behalf of Brandon and myself, we want to thank the listeners and the audience for sticking around to the end. We appreciate it. Let's support Brandon. Let's check out. Oh, and by the way, any realtors who have investors or buyers or sellers who might be looking to move, retire, invest down in the Destin 30A area, they would love to talk to you, right? You probably get calls from realtors all over the country who are like, "Hey, I'm looking for a team to refer business to." So what's the best way that anyone who wants to either work with you or refer business to you can reach out?
Absolutely. So just at Bzellas again on Instagram or at Spears Group, either one. And if you just want to call, we can chat. Doesn't have to even be about real estate. You can just call. I talk on the phone all day long, so it's kind of my thing.
Well,
So
I
I
love
would
it.
love to
And
connect.
he would love to connect. So we will put Brandon's contact information as well in our show notes. So thank you, Brandon, for being on the show. For
Thank
everyone
you so
listening,
much for having
please.
me.
Yeah, look, and for anyone out there who knows somebody who is struggling in their first couple of years, or even maybe they're not in their first couple of years and they're struggling and maybe they're losing hope, right? This is a great episode to send to them, that to see what's possible when you just put your mind to it and buckle down and really just get to work. So feel free to share this with anybody out there who's a real estate agent that could use a little bit of motivation and to sort of reset their mind of what's possible. It's easy right now, I think, to get bogged down and rates are up, inventory's down. It's tough. It's scary. And yeah, so it's nice to hear some of these success stories that people who are thriving during otherwise a pretty challenging time, I think, in real estate. So Brandon, thank you again. But for everyone out there listening, share this with a friend. Just send them over to keepingitrealpod.com. Every episode we've ever done can be streamed there. And also leave us a review for listening on whatever platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora app, Amazon, wherever, Google. Let us know what you think of the show. We appreciate it. All right, Brandon, thank you so much. And we will see
Thank you.
everybody on the next episode.